What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Brave and Faithful podcast. Today, I have with us an Air Force veteran. Uh, she was an airman, and now she is a full time mom. From airman to mom, from active duty to diaper duty. Miss Amanda Huffman. What's going on, Amanda? How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I appreciate you for coming on, and yeah, let's just start off with tell us a little bit about your service and how long you served for and how that went.
So, I joined the Air Force through the Reserve Officer Training Corps program, ROTC, and I met my husband while we were both doing ROTC, and we were able to get stationed together and get married and all that stuff. And we served both. We were both active duty for 6 years, and then when my son was born, I transitioned out of the military to be a stay-at-home mom. And I was a civil engineer. That was what my degree was in. And then that
Mhm.
was my career field as well. And so, Air Force civil engineers are very similar to engineers in the civilian workforce, except that we get to do a lot more hands on stuff and it's not as much behind the computer type jobs that I got to do in college. And so, I was at Holloman Air Force Base for my first assignment, which is in New Mexico, and the F 117 Nighthawk was being retired, and the F 22 Raptor was coming to Holloman. So there was tons of construction going on, and we just got to go and travel around the base and see all the different projects. And it was really like the coolest job ever to be a second lieutenant and to be a civil engineer and getting to see like all this construction and learning all kinds of things. It was really fun. And then while I was there, I got deployed to Afghanistan with the Army. I was part of a provincial reconstruction team, and that was to win the hearts and minds of the Afghan people. And so I was teamed up with a mix of Army infantry, National Guard, and then Army active duty, Air Force active duty, and I think there were some reservists. And it was just a kind of a mix of all of us. And then we were out there doing construction projects, schools, roads, government buildings, wells, stuff that the Afghan people wanted um, to help. They say rebuild, but
Yeah.
we weren't rebuilding anything. We were building new stuff. So it was kind of an interesting experience. And then while I was deployed, my husband got into school to get his master's at AFIT. And so I moved. My commander worked a lot of stuff behind the scenes and got me an assignment to be with him. So I was able to move to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and I worked in the energy management section doing a lot of, it was kind of the most boring job. It was like a normal office job, lots of PowerPoints and lots of meetings, not as exciting as my other two jobs.
Yeah,
So,
completely different than what you were doing before.
yeah.
So what was the time frame when you went to Afghanistan? Like when was that?
It was, I went to training in November of 2009, and then we left in February of 2010, and then I got home on November 1st of 2010.
Okay. And then so now you're at this new duty station. That's basically where you separated from the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then just kind of just going back, did you plan on becoming a career military or?
We had talked. My husband and I had talked about the possibility. It would have been great for us both to stay in for 20 years, but
Right.
his career field and my career field didn't have a lot of assignments that we could get stationed together, and we assumed that within the like 10 to 15 year mark, there'd be one point where the Air Force would be like, "You're going to Alabama and you're going to North Carolina," and we're like,
Mm,
"Yeah, with kids." And then my deployment to Afghanistan was really challenging. Our commander got fired. There was a lot of infighting on the team, and it was really difficult to deal with all the drama besides being in a war zone. And if I had my kids back at home, I think that would have been an added layer of stress that would have made it even harder because I didn't have kids when I deployed. And so that deployment was also a really big factor of me
yeah.
deciding. I was like, I don't want to do that again with a
Yep.
family.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've made my first 5 deployments without kids, and I just recently came back from deployment. You know, with obviously with my wife, and then now having a kid. And it's like, even though like the environment where I was at deployed wasn't as dangerous or stressful, I mean, just like having my baby girl, it's like it's a whole different feeling. It's like,
Right.
but yeah, I can feel that. Um, so so you get out of the military, you get out of the Air Force. How was your transition, and what would you say was your biggest takeaway from the military?
So my transition was, I would say it's a train wreck. It was not it was not smooth. I thought because I was leaving the Air Force and I wasn't going to get a job that it'd be like an easy transition. You just like switch, and like I already essentially had a job. I was going to be a mom, but I didn't realize how much of my identity was wrapped up into
Mm,
that service member aspect. And so when I went from being like Air Force officer, civil engineer to a stay at home mom, and people kind of were like, you're not important anymore. Like, no one asked about my service. They just looked at me like kind of weird if they found out I was a veteran, which usually they didn't because they just assumed I was a military spouse, and they didn't ask like, are you a veteran too? And so it was just a really hard emotional transition that I wasn't prepared for, because I and then I don't think it helped that I was becoming a new mom and all the
mm.
hormones and everything. But it was a mix of like losing my identity and becoming a mom.
Um, so why do you think that is though? Like whenever they kind of just you were talking about, they kind of just assume you were just a male spouse. Um, like why do you think there's that I don't know, I guess connotation towards like the spouse?
I think it's because, I mean, the stereotype is that most women, or even men who are military spouses, are just, they're not veterans. Or maybe with males they think they are, I don't know, maybe it's just a stereotype. But
Right.
I noticed that like even I do it myself. I don't ask like military spouses like, hey, are you a veteran too? Like sometimes I know they are, and then like we get to have cool conversations about being veterans, but it's not something that a lot of veterans have felt like ostracized when they mention that they're a veteran. So they keep it a secret that they're a veteran and just focus on being a military spouse. So there's a lot of like the stereotype, and then just the fear of like how you're going to be treated as a veteran or even
Yeah.
a service member.
So, now you're out of the Air Force, you're a full-time mom. How did this whole airman to mom, from active duty to diaper duty, how did this all come about?
So when I was deployed, I would send letters home to my friends about family and friends about my experience in Afghanistan.
Hmm.
And one of the ladies who was a friend of like a family friend that I didn't really know, but someone knew, she would email me back and was like, "You're such a good writer. You need to write a book." And she was always encouraging me. And at the time, I didn't know anything about blogging. And then when I left, I started to learn about blogs because my mom was sending me all these mom blogs to read as I was struggling with becoming a mom. And I was doing this thing called 5 Minute Friday, where I would write every Friday for 5 minutes about different topics. And through that, I started finding a community of like bloggers who are also doing this 5 Minute Friday thing. And that's when I decided I would dive in and start blogging, because I could get one post a week doing 5 minute write ups. And so that was how it started.
That's interesting. I've never where did you get the idea of the 5 Minute Friday? Was that
Oh, a blogger named Lisa Joe Baker, she was doing
okay?
it. She transferred it off to someone else, and it isn't as popular, but she is a pretty popular mom blogger in the Christian space. And she was just, I don't know how she came up with it, but she had this community, and like 700 to 1,000 people would link up every Friday to write together.
Hmm, okay. So you would do this every Friday for 5 minutes, just write something specifically about being a mom in the military, or
No, it was about she would put out a word like tree or rainbow or whatever, and whatever came to your mind, you wrote
okay.
about. So Yeah.
So with that, and getting those reps and repetition in writing and getting better, um, is that how this whole blog and this whole, because you have a podcast, obviously we talked about before, is that where all this came from?
Yeah. Yeah. It all
Okay.
started with that.
And then what would you say, like, um, what would you say was a takeaway that you had in military that's helped you prepare to be basically what you're doing now?
I think not being afraid to try something new. Well, before I left for my deployment to Afghanistan, my commander sent me, or he gave me a journal, and in it the quote said, "When you go, I can't talk. When you come to a great chasm in life, jump. It isn't that far." And so I don't usually know what I'm doing with blogging or podcasting or writing a book or any, but I just am like, oh, I'll just do it. And then I learn some stuff and correct. And it's all because that quote of like, when I was deployed, I had to jump. I didn't have a choice because the
All right.
military was like, go on that mission, get in that MRAP. And I was like, okay, okay, let's go. And so it forced me, and I learned that because I had to jump, that it wasn't as far as I thought, and I could do more than I ever expected. And so that was a quote that just stuck with me, and it's really helped me in my business because I always am like, I'll just do it. And then it probably won't be as scary as I thought. And if I mess up, then I can just do it again or change it. And so that was really what I learned from military life that I use today.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Just jump and take that leap because you never know where that can lead to. Um, Obviously, if you're moving in the right direction, as long as you're moving forward, um, I think every day you're learning because
Mm-hmm.
you know we're not all going to know what to do in the beginning. It's boot camp all over again. You know what I mean? I love how you said that. Like just take that leap, and because opportunities that you thought you'd never have might come out of that. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's awesome.
for sure.
So going through all this, now you have your website, your blog, your podcast. What would you say? Well, through that process, has there been any time that you've had like a worst moment or bad experience that you had to overcome, and how did you overcome those moments?
I think when I first started, I was trying to do it all by myself. Like I said, I had found a community, but I didn't really realize the power of that community. I was just like, oh, I just hang out with these people, but I didn't realize like finding people in your niche and finding like the veteran community. I was
Mm,
very anti veteran community. I didn't really know why, but I guess I just felt like an outsider. And so I didn't embrace the veteran community. And for me, I didn't get involved with the community, and I had mentioned that I had started to find a community when I started with the 5 Minute Friday, but I didn't realize the power and impact of connecting with other people, especially people within my niche. And I had stayed away from the veteran community. I felt like the veteran community, I wasn't accepted because I was a female, and it it kept me away from for a long time of even getting involved in the veteran space. But I met with a guy actually at a podcast conference, and we had this really long conversation. It was just a random lunch. We were both at the conference, and then we saw each other at lunch, and we're like, hey, let's go to lunch. And we talked about our experience of leaving the military, and he was saying stuff that resonated with me in such a way that I was like, oh, I'm not weird because I'm a female. I have like a lot of commonalities. And so it's through like the veteran community of getting connected with male and female veterans and being part of that community. It's just really changed like my reach and how I've grown and the opportunities that I've got to have.
that's awesome. So, talking about the most difficult and worst moments, what's been the most rewarding so far that you've had since you started in this journey?
I've got to interview so many cool people. I bet you could say that. Podcasting, you get to interview like the coolest people. And I mean, they could be someone who just served for 3 years or someone who like retired as a general. Like they all have such cool stories. And I'm
Right.
just like, you're amazing. But I have got to interview I got to interview the 23rd Secretary of the Air Force, which was like my first big like guest that I was like, this is really cool. And then I just interviewed a NASA astronaut, which was really cool because my husband's moving to the Space Force, and so we're all into like space stuff, and so that was really exciting. And so it's just the amazing people I get to talk to. It's so cool. It's like being back in the military. We get to make friends with people that you've never met before.
That's awesome. Um, so you mentioned your husband is moving to the Space Force. How does he feel about that?
Well, we're really excited. He applied to get in May, and then we found out in October that he was selected,
Right.
and he's doing space stuff right now, and we're really excited. Like we watch SpaceX launches, and not just the ones where they're going to the International Space Station, but like just when they're shooting up more satellites and stuff. And so we're really excited because it'll be a really good for when he gets out of the military to
Hmm.
transition, because he's doing that space career field, and then he'll have more opportunities. And it's just exciting to be part of a new branch that hasn't happened since the Air Force, which was it was a short time ago, but a long time ago too. So it's really
Yeah,
exciting.
that's awesome. Shout out to the husband there.
Yeah.
So for those of you guys just joining us, talking to Amanda Huffman from Airman and Mom. Um, she is a blogger and a podcaster as well. Um, so Amanda, can you give our audience an actionable step that they can take right now in pursuit of their second service?
I think just taking that first step and not getting discouraged. Like I
Mm,
started writing 5 minutes once a week. And it's fun to tell that story because people are like, wow, really? All this stuff came from writing for 5 minutes once a week? And it's like, yeah, I started at A. I don't know what letter I'm at now. Maybe I'm at like L, or but somewhere in the middle. I still have a
right.
lot more to go, but um, I like have a big dream of what you want, and then start where you are. And it doesn't matter if you can only write for 5 minutes a week or if you can write every day. Just start with what you can do, and then take steps forward, and know that it's going to take a while to get those connections and grow.
Yeah, I think that's important because not too many people uh, recognize like the the work that goes behind the scenes, right? They just see that, oh yeah, you were, like what we are talking about before, top 25 veteran hosted podcasts. Like, oh wow, that's great. Like, but they don't realize the journey that
Right.
we've all been through. Like, that we've had our
Pe-
ups and downs. The struggle, and I'm sure having a family as well, and then your husband still active duty.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so-
people are like, but you became popular so fast. I'm like, that's only because you've only known about me for a year,
right.
but I
Yeah.
I've been blogging since 2014, and
Yeah.
I wasn't popular then. And yeah, it's not nobody knew who I was for a long time.
Yeah.
So,
It's all about the repetitions, um, the behind the scenes work
mm.
that nobody actually sees. So Amanda, last question here before we go to our second segment of the show. What's one thing you want our audience to take away from this episode?
I think I want them to know that they can do anything that they set their minds to. Uh, you don't have to have a degree in marketing, or you don't have to, like, I'm a civil engineer. Like it doesn't
Hmm.
really make sense how I'm running a media company with like podcasting and writing. Most engineers are horrible writers, and so you can do anything you want. And I think when you leave the military, a lot of times they push you to like, oh well, you're a civil engineer, so you need to get a civil engineering job, instead of asking you like, do you like what you're doing? Do you
Mm.
want to continue that path? Do you want to do something else? Like there's so many different certification options and the flexibility with the GI Bill that you can do anything you want. And so figure out what you want to do. And if it is what you're already doing, that's great, but you don't have to stay in the career field that you're in, but to just dream big and do what you want. You can do anything.
I love that. Love that. Um, yeah, I mean, if you want to be a podcaster or a blogger, you don't have to go to school for that. Like, I mean, obviously, if there's professions like lawyers and doctors and things like that, you can go that route. But like you said, all this is just mostly from trial and error, and just like you said, just taking that leap and uh, just starting to do it and learning as you go. All right, Amanda. So this is our second segment of the podcast where we ask 5 questions, the same 5 questions I asked my guests. So, first question is, what's one hobby you enjoy?
I don't remember what I wrote down.
I'm gonna give you a hint. Making Mouse.
Oh, Disney.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love going to we lived in LA before we moved to Virginia, and we got passes, and we went from like sort of Disney people to those crazy Disney people. And so we love going to Disneyland and Disney World, and spending and we have Disney Plus, so we spend a lot of time watching Disney
Oh yeah,
Plus.
yeah. We got that as well. Got to get that for the girl.
Yeah.
All right. So, second question: if you had to choose one person, dead or living, to hang out with for one day, who would it be and why?
Harriet Tubman, I got to read a documentary about what
Mm.
she did, and I really only knew like the Underground Railroad part of her name and not really anything else. But she was one of the first women to like lead combat operations. They did this whole raid in the South and the Civil War, and she was part of it, and she was a spy. And it was just like, this lady is amazing. And it was
Whoa,
just so cool to learn about the history of who she was and what she did, and it would just be fascinating to hear, to spend a day
that's
with her.
interesting to hear. I mean, because usually what you read and hear about is the Underground Railroad and nothing more than that. But that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Next question: recommend a book for our audience to read.
So I'm reading Think and Grow Rich. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And it's about like changing your mindset. It's kind of like dreaming big and believing that you can do something, and it has like all these case studies of people throughout history who dreamed impossible dreams and they made it happen.
Yeah.
And it's just a really good book for like changing your mindset, and especially from like a military person, because I think a lot of times we just get stuck in like following orders and we don't remember to like think
Mhm.
for ourselves in a
Yeah, most
way.
definitely.
Yeah.
I have that book somewhere. I wish I could grab it, but I have it around here at the
I
house.
meant
But
to grab it and I forgot to.
yeah, but yeah, that's a great book. That's a great book. Next question: what's your favorite quote and why?
Well, I already told you guys it was when you come to a great chasm in life, jump. And that's by Joseph Campbell. But jump, it isn't that far.
Yeah, I love that quote. And then last thing, where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, or even 10 years from now?
So when my husband retires from the military in the next like 5 to 10 years, I'm hoping that I can take more. Right now, I'm like the stable person because well, before COVID, he traveled all the time.
Mm,
Now he just works crazy hours. So I guess that's like the other trade off. And so I have to be like the stable person, and there's opportunities that I would love to get to do, but I have to sometimes say no just based on like he's the main breadwinner, and my kids are still really young. And so in 5 to 10 years, when he's out of the military and he has more of a like normal job because he's not in the military, then I want to be able to like say yes to more opportunities. And my boys will be 5 to 10 years older, and so it'll be like perfect timing to make that switch from like where boys need their moms when they're little and then they need their dads when they're older. So but I just want to be a speaker and just help women, the next generation of women, to serve is really where my new focus point is.
that's awesome. Again, Amanda, I appreciate you for sharing your story. talking about a little bit about your service and what I'd like to call your second service, what you're doing now. And thank you for being a leader, especially with women in the military, and kind of just sharing their stories and being a strong voice for that community. So one last thing, where can our audience stay in touch with you?
So my blog is airmantomom.com, and on social media you can find me at airmantomom. And then my podcast is called Women of the Military.
Women of the Military podcast. And then guys, just make sure you go check it out, airmantomom.com, and then on all social media handles, airman to mom. Again, Amanda, thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right, guys, take care.